Rabbi Manis Friedman, thank God it's Tuesday. Exactly a year ago, actually even a little more, it was April 28th. We have everything recorded. That's why we call the radio. We had a program that was absolutely mind-blowing. It's even more mind-blowing today than it was then, because all I asked you, and this was more than a year ago, what is happening with the world? And here's what you said. We're going to play a little clip from that program.
Uh-oh. What is going to happen, and it's already happening, but what you're going to see a lot of is the exposure. All negative, ugly, selfish, bad things that have been hiding behind fancy words, good excuses, political institutions, even bad philosophies, it's all going to be exposed. The bad is just going to look really bad, and the good is going to look purely good. So this is what's going to happen now. The exposure, the separation, undoing the damage of the tree of knowledge. Good is going to be good, bad is going to be bad, and we're not going to confuse them anymore. When that happens, the bad is finished, because it has no leg to stand on. If it can't hide behind good, if it can't draw its life from goodness, it has no life at all. So there are going to be some pretty bad things. The good news is it will look so bad that it doesn't have a life. Once exposed, it's gone.
Wow. How did you know? That is actually a lesser question than the question. You were so on the money. You were so clear, and everything you said on April 28th, 2020 is exactly what has been happening and what we have been seeing, how evil is revealing itself. So, of course, I'm going to have to ask the most important question of them all. What is happening with the world now, and what are we in for now?
Unfortunately, it's taking longer than is comfortable. Should have been done by now. Why is the world so slow to catch on? But yes, that is what is happening. That is what's happening. The bad is so bad, it is so absurd, and it is so pointless. I don't know why there's still some tolerance for it among people. There shouldn't be. All of it should be totally intolerable. I don't know what it'll take to convince people, but it's happening. Unfortunately, the bad is it could look impressive, like a real serious threat to the world. It's not. It's a threat to itself. But when will we finally see it, admit it, and be done with it? That's the impatience, the urgency. Enough already. It's a bad joke, and nobody's laughing anymore. So, the most recent is the craziness in Israel going on now.
Yes.
Politically, the craziness, no elections, they don't know they're coming or going, and the whole system is a mess. And then the rockets, the attacks and the violence and the terrorism, and living in bunkers again. Year after year after year, the same thing, the same news. We moved into a house back 30 years ago, and we were doing some remodeling. So we tore down some sheetrock. And back in the 50s, the houses they built were hardly insulated because heating was cheap. Nobody cared. So they didn't insulate very well. So in one of the walls, I found an old newspaper. Guess what the headline was?
I can't even guess.
something about Syria attacks Israel. Or Israel retaliate, whatever it was. There was a war between Israel and Syria. Well, same thing over and over and over. What is that? Why are we stuck? Why?
The best question is, why are we stuck?
Yes. It's not rational.
It's not.
When there's a war, when there's a war, there's a war. You resolve it, you finish it, and you go on. This is endless. What's going on there?
Rabbi Friedman, the crazy thing is how the world is reacting to what is happening. I mean, U.S. and most of the countries are condemning Israel for attacks when 200 rockets were targeted at Israel. I mean, they're saying Israel is the oppressor. Who are they shooting at? Are they shooting at armies? No, they're shooting at people, at residential areas. How can the world be so insane and see everything through I don't know what?
And how can people be so blind as to not realize the headlines yesterday said 30 rockets landed in cities. No casualties reported.
Thank God.
What?
Yeah.
30 rockets and no casualties reported? What are these, toy rockets? The absolute stunning miracle. And this has been going on for 20 years. Rockets after rocket. What is it, 30,000 rockets have been over the years? Well, and the headline keeps saying, no casualties reported.
Unfortunately, today they reported 2 casualties.
Which only proves the point.
Yeah. Out of 200 rockets overnight, yeah. That's the numbers are small, but they're still there.
Yes. So let's just talk for a moment. It's irrelevant to most of your listeners, but what are the rules of engagement? How are you supposed to fight a war? Israel has fought 5 wars. How are you supposed to fight a war according to the Torah? Because nothing has changed. The rules that applied 3,000 years ago still apply today. The rules are this. You must end the war as quickly and as efficiently as possible. That is goal number 1. It has to happen quickly. Because you don't want an entire generation growing up under the threat of war or under the experience of war. Because then you have destroyed an entire generation. So you want it to be over before your kid's birthday. That is the most humane, the most considerate, and the most godly way. End it quickly. Don't let it drag. How do you end it quickly? By having a decisive victory. Not a fight to a standstill. That doesn't resolve anything, and it guarantees another attack and another war. It's got to be decisive victory. A decisive victory means the people the nation, the mothers and fathers of the soldiers have to experience the defeat. Otherwise, they will simply send their next child to war. So defeating an army is not a victory. It's a chess game. To really have a victory, you have to defeat the people who create the army. When they're defeated, you will have peace. In some instances, like I believe in Israel, if the Arab knew that Israel is going to take decisive action, there would not be a war. By being indecisive, you actually encourage attacks, you encourage terrorism, you encourage it all. It's just basic, simple. Fighting a polite war means there's going to be more victims, more casualties. It's going to last longer. Children are going to grow up warlike, and there's no end in sight. So the kindest, the most moral, the most considerate way to fight is to fight decisively, quickly, and get it over with. These negotiations, you know how long they've been talking about the peace process?
Since the beginning.
The peace process? What peace process? That's political games at the cost of lives, which is another principle in war. Politicians do not decide how to fight wars. Only the military can do that. If you think you have an army that is capable of doing the job, then they do it. Politicians stay out of it completely. So, if we followed the Torah, if we simply did things the way God instructs us to do it, everything in life would be more successful, from love to war.
That's a great thought, but unfortunately, we're not there yet.
In either field.
Yes. But Rabbi Friedman, another thing that you said on that program of April 28th, 2020, and I just want to point out again that you called it, and this was exactly a month before the first riot took place, because the first riot took place in Minnesota on May 26th. And you said the good and the evil are going to be separating, and the evil is going to reveal itself. And that's exactly what has been happening throughout this whole year. Rabbi Friedman, I do have to ask, you do have certain insights. Where do they come from?
Mostly the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And his insights, of course, come from the Torah. Except that he sees more than most people see when he looks at the Torah. So, as a very general principle, the world is moving towards a positive, divine conclusion. We have to identify the players. We have to identify the progress, the path that it's taking, but we know what's going on. The rest is commentary.
Do we know what's going on? That's the big question, because another thing that you said during that program is that Mashiach will come when things become clear. Are we there yet?
We're much, much closer than we were a year ago. And a year ago, we were closer than we were 10 years ago. So definitely, the direction is good. The process is painful. But that's the story. That's the story of life. You work hard, you do what you need to do, and you get wonderful results. But cleaning up the lowest of all possible worlds, that's quite a job. It's taken 5,000 years, but we never go backwards. It's always forward. You just need to be convinced of that so that you can see. In other words, if you know what your goal is, then you can tell whether you're getting closer or further. When we don't even know what our goal is, all we see is confusion. And the darkness and lowness of this lowest of all worlds. That's all we see. We see how low it is, but we have no idea whether it's moving forward or backward, upward or downward, because you don't know what the goal and objective is.
So as a society, we still don't have a real focus on what we want?
That's a religious failure, I think. Religion has not provided the vision to know where we're going and how to get there. It just tells you that when you die, something will happen. That's not useful information. I don't plan on dying. It's not on my agenda, not in my bucket. So it's nice to know that there is life after you pass away. And okay, but I'm not going there. Can you tell me something about here and now?
Rabbi Friedman, you said that while the evil is going to reveal itself, you said that the good will also reveal itself. We see a lot of evil, but not equal amount of good just yet.
Well, it's only because the evil gets the headline and the good is on the back page. But that's media. I mean, if you look at the reaction and the response of people in Israel to the tragedy in Meron, it's breathtaking. Not a thought, not a word about revenge and blaming and vilifying who did it, who's responsible, who are we going to lynch? None of it. None of it. A strengthening of faith, a coming together, a mutual grieving, respect for those who died. It's just, I mean, if the world doesn't notice this, they're brain dead. There's something amazing there. I mean, if there was any doubt in anybody's mind that the Jews are the chosen people, this should have resolved it permanently. It's a different mentality. And it wasn't there 2 weeks ago. It came out. It showed itself. The unity. There's very little unity in Israel. You have 32 political parties. It tells you a lot. So whenever Jews can agree on something universally, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And
so are we not seeing goodness? We're seeing amazing goodness. It's not in the headlines. It's a byline.
Well, hopefully it'll be in the headlines very, very soon, because I think people are getting very, very anxious. I mean, the further we go, the more impossible it is getting for those who see it, for those who recognize it. Some people still don't see it. Much easier to close your eyes and, put a patch on it. But those who are seeking the truth, those who want to get to the point of ultimate goodness, are really, really being very antsy right now. I thought it was just me, but no.
And it's also helpful if they listen to your program, to your station, on the good news.
We try. We bring it every day, half an hour on the hour, and try to make things. But you know what? We need a lot more material to work with. Still not enough to make it real full. And actually, we started to speak about unity. And I wanted to ask about this divide and conquer strategy that is being placed in America and all over the world, where races are being put against each other. I mean, it's crazy, but on May 9th in Washington, they actually passed a law critical of race theory for children from kindergarten and up. And of course, those children will learn only the fact that white people are oppressors, black people are oppressed. I mean, honestly, all of this is coming as really, really big news to me. I never felt anything or even thought about the things that are being pushed now onto me. And when I say me, I'm sure everybody else feels exactly the same way. I mean, we're learning the fact that we're haters. We really didn't know that before. We're learning the fact that we thought we were better than another human being because of their color. And honestly, I don't think we thought that anymore. Disney has put in a program, mandatory program for their employees, and those that don't do it are going to be fired. And it's called Reimagine Tomorrow. Yeah, it's scary if we're going to reimagine tomorrow the way the politicians are trying to reimagine. And another thing, this was mind-blowing completely when Michelle Obama said that she's oppressed. Being a first lady for 8 years, that's oppression. I'd like to get that kind of oppression. Well, not really, but, you know, a minuteness of that.
Maybe she meant being married to Obama. But yes, if you want to make things better, and all you're doing is creating a new villain to be hated and despised and hunted, what are you doing? Now, the people who are doing this are not stupid. They may be crazy, but they're not stupid. And you have to wonder, what are they trying to gain by this? How do they gain from this? They're putting in a lot of effort. Not for nothing. They're not doing it for free. What are they gaining from this? And that's a scary thought. What does anybody ever gain by encouraging hatred?
Money and power, usually.
Something evil. But it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Now the people who are saying, we have to end racism. And racism drips from their mouth. It's so obvious. Actually, it's not even racism. They hate everybody. They'll use anybody that is available for their own ends. So it's not even racism. It's just unapologetic evil. I will use anything, anyone, anytime, anywhere to gain, whether it's money or power or... It's so laughable.
If we all see it now, and I'm sure the majority of people are seeing exactly what you're saying, that it's a plan, and it's a plan that's being really enforced, especially lately, and we all see it. Why can't we do anything about it?
There was a very wise, famous statement that would be very appropriate to this conversation, and I can't remember what it is. Something about when good people are silent, the bad people get all the succeed. Good people are good people. They don't really have an agenda. They have to be driven by altruistic, selfless devotion to goodness. Now, that's asking a lot. Evil people have a very selfish agenda. They're very driven. They don't need any encouragement, and so they grab the headlines. Evil is always more aggressive because it has to be to survive. Whereas good people have a little comforting thought that, I'm good, my family's good, my community is good. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone was good? But, I can't change the world. So we need to be a little more aggressively good. We got to match the enemy. If they're being aggressive, we got to be aggressive. But aggressively good. Not an equal and opposite evil, which is what every revolution ever in history was. An equal but opposite evil. Now we just need good. And good is not vague and it's not mysterious. Good means the way the Torah tells us to do it. Every day. Another rejected principle that was considered old-fashioned, irrelevant, too religious, too spiritual. Every day we discover it as the most sensible, the most reasonable, the most moral, the most beautiful way of doing things. I spoke on a radio show yesterday about married couples having separate beds. From a completely secular, non-traditional perspective, the wisdom of it. So the interviewer asked me, what led you to the conclusion that 2 beds is better than 1? I said, sleep deprivation. You sleep better. What else do you want? No, but they realized that it is so deadening to sleep in the same bed night after night and just want to sleep because you're tired. You grow apart by the minute, ignoring each other night after night. It is so unromantic.
Agreed. What is better, separate beds or separate bedrooms?
Separate bedrooms was never traditional. It could be because we couldn't afford it. We had a 1-room house and that was it. But separate beds is really enough. Enough of a separation to make coming together meaningful.
At any age?
At any age.
Were they convinced?
Yeah, they were. That's what they wanted to hear.
Oh, really?
So we had an interesting experience. There was this young couple who had become observant, a Jewish couple, and they wanted to have a very traditional wedding. At a traditional wedding, men and women sit separately. And there's a curtain, a room divider, separating the men from the women. Now, the rest of the families, both his and hers, were not observant and not used to this, and they were very uncomfortable and very critical. So when we finally sat down at the men's tables, the men at the table I was sitting at were griping about, it's ridiculous, you can't even talk to your own wife? Can't sit next to your own wife? This is ridiculous. Anyway, an amazing thing happened. As soon as the music started, the men ended up standing on the men's side of the room divider. The women were standing on the women's side, and on their tiptoes, they were looking over the the divider, and talking to each other. When they came back to the table, I said to them, that's amazing. Tell me, if your wives were all sitting here at the table, would you be talking to your wife? No. But this tiny little separation, all of a sudden you need to talk to your wife. It's beautiful. It's effective.
Rabbi Friedman, Torah rules are so different than the rules of today's society. I mean, just from what you said right now, separate beds would be viewed as separation. One bed, cuddling, that is when people really show affection for each other, and that's what brings them closer. So it seems like Torah teaches the opposite of everything that the society has reimagined.
Every popular idea in popular culture is bad. If it's popular in the culture, it's bad. It's like junk food, junk sex, junk philosophy. It's junk. If it's cheap and available everywhere, don't buy it.
Rabbi Friedman, what other standards are in the way right now that we're facing that should be broken, taken away, in order for us to come to this clarity, full clarity, and you know, the clarity that will bring us to the right decisions, to the right choices?
The ultimate final hurdle is life is not for me. My life is not for me. That is such a huge mistake. It's my life, it's all about me. No, it's your life, and it's not about you. You were not given life to keep it. You were given life to increase it, to share it, to reproduce yourself, not to just remain yourself. That's stagnating, and stagnation is unhealthy. Life is not about you. Your love is not for you. Your intelligence and wisdom is not for you. Whatever gift we are given, it's because we can share it and must share it with those around us. To hold it on for yourself, to hold it all for yourself, that's gluttony. It's so unhealthy. Everything you see on the table is for you to eat. You're in trouble. The money you have is for you to keep in a sock under your bed. You're in trouble. You have to live life, not hoard life. That basically would change everything. That one shift in our thinking, it would make us healthier, wiser, stronger, and more godly. Doesn't everybody want those things? Isn't that what everybody's looking for in all the wrong places?
Hope so. Hope so.
I'm convinced that it is. People want what is wise, what is true, what is kind, life-giving, and innocent and holy. Everybody wants it. And yet, when it's offered, people don't recognize the potential. So I don't know, is it because religion has gotten such a bad name, because of the abuses of religion, and now the abuses of government, so now we can't trust government, and the abuses of all institutions that have become too mechanical and dehumanized. So we gotta go back to the real thing. You know what's really scary? I just got off a flight. Just landed. What's really scary is the airports are going back to, or the airlines are going back to normal. The old normal. That's really discouraging. In all this time, you haven't been able to rethink and reimagine and improve anything? The lines are still long and the checking and nothing has improved? We really missed a chance. Missed a great opportunity.
Rabbi Friedman, how would you change the airlines? What kind of changes should they undergo?
For starters, start thinking about what's best for the passenger instead of what's best for your profit margin. You'll make just as much money. You don't get richer by making people uncomfortable and putting the burden on them. No, it takes us longer to get you on board, so come an hour earlier. Stop blaming the customers. But no, it didn't happen. Same announcements with the same restrictions, with the same discomforts. It's so inefficient.
Rabbi Friedman, you actually, it's exactly the point that I wanted to bring up, saying that on, I believe, May 17th, New York is going to open up completely, and things are going to go back to normal. And just like you said, that is probably the scariest thought of it we can possibly have, is to go back to where we were a year ago, because unfortunately then all of this was completely for nothing, and I so hope that that's not the case.
Yes. I hope schools have learned something, business has learned something, government has learned something, but all we know is what we don't like. And that's also good.
What if they haven't?
Huh?
What if they haven't? Where are we going to be if no one has learned anything from whatever we've just gone through?
It's not possible. No one has. Not possible.
Not enough people.
Not enough. But what happened to Manhattan is such a wake-up call. Such a shake-up. Everybody's confident it'll come back. People want to live in Manhattan. They'll come back. To what? To the old crime rate? Why would they come back? To the old taxes? To the old traffic problems? And nothing? Nobody has any imagination? Manhattan can be a very exciting, good place. Why isn't anybody moving in that direction in the public, in the media? Behind the scenes, maybe it is happening. It must be happening because people do want Manhattan to come back. It's for selfish reasons. But if you want it to come back, make it more appealing.
But
you would think that that's common sense.
But who is doing it? We know who is ruling New York, and we know what the agenda is. How can it possibly change if the same people are in charge?
But there are different interests. They're not all single-minded. Among those who are in charge, there are very different interests. There's political interest, financial interest, cultural interest. Somebody's got to start the ball rolling in the right direction. So it's not just one player here. There are many players, and any one of them can make a huge improvement for everybody.
Rabbi Friedman, what about the trust factor that we completely lost over the past year? Can't trust anything or anyone. how do we live in the world without trust for our environment?
Well, we got used to that a long, long time ago. In fact, King David, who understood politics, he was involved. He says in Tehillim, in Psalms, he says, Al tiftachu b'nedivim. Don't place your trust in leaders. It hasn't changed. So, we get a little hopeful, maybe a benevolent dictator once in a while, better than an evil dictator. But put your trust in people. You put your trust in God, God's plan, God's teachings, God's instructions. They never fail. They never bring harm. That's something you can trust. And then you have a standard by which to measure your leaders. How do you know if they're good leaders? Well, if they don't believe in God, run for your life. If they believe in false gods, run for your life.
What about when they lie about believing in God?
They lie about believing in the God of Israel, but they have their own God that they're worshiping. So it's the wrong God. Everybody worships. It's an old Bob Dylan line. Everybody serves somebody. It's a question of somebody worth worshiping or serving, or somebody not worth. So the God of Israel has proved to be reliable, benevolent, and determined. So we know where we need to go, and we're confident that we're going to get there. Because it's His plan. So there's no need to be greedy. There's no need to be overly aggressive. You're not going to gain anything. God's plan will prevail. So settle down. See what good you can do. See how you can partner with God in this plan. Because nothing else is going to succeed in the end. Might as well get on board with the ship going in the right direction.
Amazing, Rabbi Friedman. I really, really hope more people will realize it. I don't know what we can do to get people to realize it and get on board, because I'm sure that that's exactly where the answer is. The more people unite in this right kind of thinking, the quicker the world is going to become better. But how do we do that? That's the biggest question.
Yes, and we have to be united with conviction, not hopeful. Hope this works. No, this is working. It has always worked, and it will always work. So no room for doubts. The evil doesn't doubt itself. The humble and the good are full of doubts. That's not healthy. That's not a balanced, equal contest. We have to stop doubting ourselves. Stop doubting the truth of what is true, and the goodness of what is good, and the holiness of what is holy. No doubts. And that's why we have to be very confident. The evil will eat itself. It will implode. It is imploding. But what can we do to make the good a little more popular? Like somebody said, stop fighting anti-Semitism. Start producing pro-Semitism. Always anti this, anti that.
We kind of did that last year a little bit.
Antibiotics.
Yeah. We kind of did that last year a little bit when that awful series came out, Unorthodox, and we crossed out the un and made it orthodox and showed the positivity of it. And then so many more things happened in the world that took over. But it's, Rabbi Friedman, it's amazing. And I always wanted to somehow, because this is the field I'm in, marketing, advertising, radio, always wanted to make people, to market Judaism, to make it more understandable to people. And I have to say, I was absolutely amazed with your recent video on what is Torah. I think you kind of did that. I think you made it as clear as possible for anybody who wants to know out there what is Torah and to understand why it's so holy and what it does. Absolutely amazing. I take my hat off to you. And so much more. I appreciate everything that you do, and I hope and I know the whole world really appreciates your input and your teachings that are happening absolutely every day and many, many times a day. Rabbi Friedman, thank you so much for also giving your time to our little Russian radio and to the Russian community, and to open up world wisdom, God's wisdom.
The Russian community is crucial. It's not just another community. Now, in the 80s, when the Russians were coming in mass to Israel, or the 70s? 70s?
Yeah.
They ever said to somebody, Israel, the Israelis, have gotten tired. Their idealism has waned. When the Russians come, idealism will come back. And that's exactly what happened. Everybody's so proud of the fact that Israel is such a startup nation, and there's such great startups, and we're doing all sorts of things, great advancements in science and in medicine. It's all Russians. So I guess the way the Russians go, so goes the world.
Well, I hope that we can live up to the expectations, and of course with your help. And again, thank you so much for this time that you allocate for us on weekly basis. Every time I wake up in the morning, I do first thing say, thank God it's Tuesday, because this is the opportunity to enhance our the way we view the world, and you do that absolutely every week for us. Thank you so much. I want to wish you and your family a very happy Shavuos, receiving of the Torah. So may we make it more accessible to the world in the very, very near future.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Rabbi Friedman.